classified summaries of FISA court opinions that have been issued regarding these programs, as Senator Merkley proposes to do in a bill that I'm a supporter of, obviously with limitations on any security breaches.
Right. Senator, I agree with you that
Mr. David Scott. Off aye, on no for Mr. David Scott. Mr. Johnson of Georgia. Mr. Johnson of Georgia votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 177, the nays are 236. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on Amendment 2, printed in the congressional record, offered by the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Moran, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendments.
Amendment number 2, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Moran of Virginia.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
So voting now on another amendment from Virginia Democrat Jim Moran to the Energy and Water Projects Bill. It would prevent a change in rules regarding which materials can be discharged into waterways. During the debate today on this Energy and Water Projects Bill, several members brought up student loan rates, which doubled on July 1st. Today's legislation is not related to student loans, but some Democrats said the issue should get a higher priority for Congress. We spoke with a congressional reporter about the issue.
This is a congressional reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Senate Democrats have offered a proposal to roll back the student loan interest rate to 3.4%. Now, as you know, it doubled to 6.8% effective July 1st. How much support does that proposal to roll back the rates have?
Well, it has almost no support amongst Republicans and, frankly, limited support amongst Democrats. There are a number of folks on the liberal side of the Democratic caucus who do support this one-year rollback to where rates were until the beginning of this month. Their argument being that what they want is Congress to do a proper overhaul of federal government policy for the higher education sphere. And as part of that, they would hope that they would address this loan rate issue on a more permanent basis. The problem is that they're running into the simple fact of the matter that rates have now doubled, and as I say, there's little consensus as to what they should do in the short term about those rates. Now, there's another plan that's floating around that has bipartisan support. On the Democratic side of the aisle, you have Senators Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Tom Carper of Delaware, and then independent Senator Angus King of Maine. They're working with an equal number of Republicans to concoct a plan that would see some rates go up, other rates go down, but what they see is a more market-based solution to the loan debacle. That plan would be more in keeping with what the House Republicans passed earlier in the year and what the President proposed in his budget back in February. Unfortunately, that plan doesn't seem to have enough support amongst Democrats to be voted through the Senate yet. So what we really have is a kind of dueling plan situation where it's not evident yet what votes are going to occur for which plan win. There's a lot of talk that we could see some action later this week, and not clear yet what exactly is going to happen there. But I think what's most interesting about the situation is, in contrast to last year, where there was a real sense of urgency that this had to get done before July 1st, and of course there was a very large political dynamic going on there. This year, the July 1st deadline came and went, and there's really little sense of urgency. Rates have now doubled for a lot of students taking out new loans, and every day that nothing is done, you know, the students taking out new loans are paying higher interest rates, and yet there's no sign of really any immediate solution to this quandary.
Well, the Democrats, let's go back to the Democrats' plan. How much money would it cost the federal government to do it for just 1 year, and where does that money come from to finance it?
Democrats would take money from mind freeze for a second. The Democratic plan would the key thing for them is they don't want to add to the deficit as part of their plan. The other plans out there, the Republican plan in the House and the bipartisan one that has been negotiated between the senators I mentioned a moment ago, that would add to the deficit. And Democrats, especially liberal-leaning Democrats, have argued that they're essentially seeking to help balance the federal budget on the back of students, and they argue that that's not an appropriate way. So what they would do is they would take money from tax credits available to other entities, and they would use that money to pay for their short-term fix.
Now, the Republican bill has attracted some support from Democrats. Who's in sync with that bill, and why are they going against their party on the issue?
Well, I think you've got folks that I mentioned, some centrist people like Messrs. Carper, Manchin, and King, who they don't see it as going against their party as much as they see it as an area where there can be bipartisan cooperation. Not exactly a concept that's happening in droves up here on the Hill these days. So they don't see it as necessarily voting or going against their party, especially considering that their plan is fairly similar to that which President Barack Obama outlined in his budget request to Congress earlier in the year. What they see it as is a more realistic long-term fix to what essentially was put in place as a short-term solution a few years ago. Their plan would link the rates that new loans are taken out to long-term interest rates paid by the federal government, or sorry, charged to the federal government, and what they view as a plan that would fix the problem once and for all, as opposed to these kind of short-term, year-long extensions we've started to see of late.
What has the administration had to say about this?
Frankly, very little publicly. They talk in broad generalities about the president's plan released in his budget earlier in the year. They talk about the desire to see a solution fixed. They talk about the desire to see the parties come together. But what we haven't seen is any really senior administration officials talk in public right now as to what specifically they want to see happen. We hear from our sources that behind the scenes, the administration is giving support to the liberal-leaning Democrats in the Senate who want to do the one-year extension. At the same time, they recognize, of course, that there's not enough support to get that done right now. So what Democratic aides are telling me, Democratic leadership aides are telling me, is they want to know with greater clarity what the White House wants to see happen right now. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid today, when speaking to reporters, mentioned that he is seeking a meeting with the White House Chief of Staff, Dennis McDonough, as well as Arne Duncan, the Education Secretary. I gather that would be an opportunity to get a better sense as to where the administration is and how hard they're going to push for their solution to be realized.
Corey Bowles is a congressional reporter for the Wall Street Journal. We appreciate your being with us.
On this vote, the yeas are 188, the nays are 226. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on Amendment Number 7, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by the gentleman from California, Mr. Takano, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment Number 7, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Takano of California.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of a request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
So this is the third of 5 amendments to be voted on in this block. The measure would cut $245 million from nuclear weapons programs and shift the money to clean energy programs. Again, the total cost of this bill, just under $30 billion. As we said earlier, student loan rates doubled on July 1st. On the other side of the Capitol today, Senator Harry Reid spoke about the issue on the Senate floor.
President, in America, this great country of ours, quality education is the surest path to the American dream. Now, when I was a boy, we always looked at that American dream as getting a college education, which, from where I came, didn't happen very often. But now that American dream is more than just getting an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. It involves many other occupations. All the things available in healthcare now, nursing, nurses' assistants, all the technicians, the people who do physical therapy, not physical therapists, but people who help doctors do what they need to. We have programs, you can become a physician's assistant, many programs that are important to making the fulfillment of that American dream. All kinds of different programs for computer training, separate and apart from getting a bachelor's degree. Those programs are extremely important, and the reason that they're important is we as Americans have decided that with the cost of education skyrocketing as it is, students should get some help, whether they're seeking a degree in engineering or getting a program that they can begin some computer training to have a job that they want for the rest of their lives. But, Madam President, college has never been more expensive and further out of reach for American families. That's why it's critical we keep interest rates low on federal student loans so more promising students can realize their dream of an education. Last month, Republicans rejected Democrats' plan to freeze student loan interest rates at current levels for 2 years without adding a penny to the deficit. Because of this obstruction, loan rates doubled on July 1st, piling thousands of dollars more on debt that more than 7 million students owe. Republicans are instead pushing a plan to balance the budget really on the backs of struggling students. But if either the legislation passed by House Republicans or the plan proposed by Senate Republicans becomes law, student loan rates would more than double over the next few years as interest rates increase. The Speaker, Speaker Boehner, says the House has acted and now the ball's in the Senate's court. We talked about that yesterday, Madam President. What is he talking about? They've acted, now we should act. I guess we could talk about what they didn't do last year on the Farm Bill. I guess we could talk about what they didn't do last year on post office. I guess we could talk about what they haven't done this year on the Farm Bill. We could talk about what they haven't done that is so devastating to small business around America. That is, having people who are online, who don't build a single building, rent a single building, they get a different rate of return than do those brick and mortar buildings. They do that because they don't have to pay sales tax. Now, we could talk about why the Speaker is refusing to take up something that's meaningful. Now, as I say about this student loan thing, I've said this, I just had a meeting that ended a few minutes ago. If you can explain to me why these proposals that the Republicans have are better than just having the rates double, please explain that to me. But they go into all these gyrations about whether it's a T-bill that's overnight T-bill or 30 days or 6 months or all this complicated stuff. And it's factual. I met with someone from the White House. And I said, okay, tell me what happens in 3 years. Oh, well, the rates would be above 6.8%. That's a problem. If someone can show me how all these programs that they're coming up with is better than just letting things double, tell me. We have a better proposal. We have a better proposal. Instead of pushing a plan to balance the budget on the backs of struggling students, I think we should support a plan that would be better for students, not worse for students. I repeat, we can't support a plan that would be worse for students than doing nothing at all. We have to take action. The rising price of higher education means too many young people are deferring higher education. I hear all the stories, Madam President. Well, education used to be cheaper. Well, because of what's happened here in Washington with the obstruction we've had to help people, there's been less support of higher education from the states. Tuition costs have risen significantly because of that. Students need help. We have to take action. The rising price of higher education means too many young people are deferring higher education. And has saddled many who do get a degree with unsustainable debt. Debt that caused them to delay buying their first home or even having children or give up on starting a business. Americans have more than $1 trillion in student loan debt. And the average graduate owes more than $25,000. In fact, Americans have more student loan debt than credit card debt.
Amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Perry, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Perry of Pennsylvania.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
So this amendment offered by Scott Perry of Pennsylvania would shift $31 million from Energy Department administrative programs to hydroelectric power programs. This energy and water projects bill is being considered under an open amendments process, meaning there is no limit on the number of amendments that members can offer. The total cost of the bill is just over $30 billion. That's a reduction over current spending. It makes cuts to clean energy programs and increases spending on maintaining the nation's nuclear weapons stockpile. The administration says the president will veto the bill if sent to him as is.
The yeas are 140, the nays are 275. The amendment is not agreed to. The committee will be in order. Members are advised to take their seats. The committee will be in order.
We need a slow hammer.
The committee will be in order. Members are advised to take their seats. Members are advised to take their seats. The committee will be in order.
Speaker?
For what purpose does the gentlelady from California seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to speak out of order.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I rise with the greatest respect, admiration, and appreciation to congratulate the distinguished gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, who has served for nearly 4 decades in the House of Representatives. 2 weeks ago, in their wisdom, the people of Massachusetts elected him to the United States Senate. I'm pleased to yield to this skillful leader, this person of great vision, a legislative virtuoso, a person who has served with great values. It is a bittersweet moment for me to yield for the last time to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Leader, very much. 37 years ago, I stepped off of a plane here, and it was my first visit in my life to Washington, D.C. I had never been here before, and I was sworn in as a congressman on my first visit to this city 37 years ago. And I am so proud to have been a congressman here in this chamber along with all of you. For me, the House is democracy in action, all of us declaring our love of country and our desire for a better future for all of our constituents and for our nation. I am honored to have served here. I am blessed to have made so many wonderful friends here, and I am humbled by the dedication of all of you to this great nation. As I have represented Massachusetts, so too have each of you represented your states with your conscience. I now go to serve in the Senate, but there is a big part of me that will always be a man of the House after 37 years having served here in this great body. And with that, for the last time, I say, Madam Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you all so much.
Without objection, 5-minute voting will continue. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the First Amendment offered by the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Brown, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Brown of Georgia.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of a request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
This amendment from Paul Brown of Georgia would reduce spending on renewable energy and efficiency programs by $10 million. This House bill is the 2014 Energy and Water Spending Bill. It provides just over $30 billion. That's 9% less than this year and 12% less than the President's request. The bill includes the Energy Department's nuclear weapons and uranium programs. Those programs would get more money, and renewable energy and energy research would get less money. The Army Corps of Engineers water projects would be cut 2%, with construction cut 20%. Debate on amendments is expected to continue into the evening.
On this vote, the yeas are 153, the nays are 257. The amendment is not agreed to. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Madam Chair, I move that the committee now do rise.
The question is on the motion that the committee rise. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the committee rises.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union, having had under consideration H.R. 2609, directs me to report that it has come to no resolution thereon.
The Chair of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that committee has had under consideration H.R. 2609 and has come to no resolution thereon. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk a privileged report from the Committee on Rules for filing under the rule.
The clerk will report the title.
Report to accompany House Resolution 292, resolution providing for consideration of the bill, H.R. 761, to require the Secretary of the Interior and the Secretary of Agriculture to more efficiently develop domestic sources of the minerals and mineral materials of strategic and critical importance to United States economic and national security and manufacturing competitiveness.
Refer to the House calendar and order printed. We good with that one? Okay. Pursuant to House Resolution 288 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House in the Committee of the Whole House and the State of the Union for the further consideration of H.R. 2609. Will the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Ross-Letham, kindly resume the chair?
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the further consideration of H.R. 2609, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for energy and water development and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2014, and for other purposes.
When the Committee of the Whole rose earlier today, amendments offered by the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Brown, had been disposed of, and the bill had been read through page 22, line 9. Line 8. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Madam Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Swalwell.
And I ask for unanimous consent to waive reading of the amendment.
Is there objection? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Chair, I rise in support of my amendment, which would transfer $1 million to the Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, or EERE, from administrative funds. I recently organized a letter joined by almost 80 of my colleagues calling for robust and sustained funding for this crucial program. EERE's research and development and deployment programs focus on three major fields: renewable electricity generation, sustainable transportation, and energy-saving homes, buildings, and manufacturing. This program plays a key role in advancing America's all-of-the-above energy strategy, and we must set priorities and make smart, strategic decisions about federal funding. This is the only way to ensure that this country is prepared for whatever changes the markets may experience. And I thank our ranking member for yielding me the time and allowing me to speak about the amendment, and I appreciate her comments about either you look backwards or you look forward or you act forward when it comes to how we get our energy supply. And she has talked on the floor today and articulated that our country right now faces a trade deficit, and she's right. Every month, by about $40 billion, we are importing more goods and services than we are exporting. And in many cases, that is because of the crude oil that we have to import month after month after month because we are not meeting our own energy needs. In the United States, at our peak production, optimal peak production, we only have about 3% of the world's crude oil. However, our country, our consumers, our people, we consume about 22% of the world's crude oil. There's a supply problem in this country. We need to not drill our way out of this, but invent our way out of this, innovate our way out of this, and EERE program allows us to do that. Unfortunately, this bill consolidates the Office of Electricity Delivery and Energy Reliability and the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy within DOE and funds the combined programs at about $983 million. This is a cut to these programs of $971 million below fiscal year 2013. I am honored to serve as the ranking member on the Science, Space, and Technology Subcommittee on Energy because I believe that the federal government has a role to play in encouraging energy innovation in this country. This bill does not just, it does the opposite by gutting the EERE program. Instead of innovating our way out, rather than drilling our way out, we are doing the opposite. We gut crucial EERE funds. As Washington bickers, our competitors are pulling out all stops to capitalize on the booming clean energy economy. By cutting the EERE program so drastically now, we all but ensure that the United States will miss out on scientific discoveries that could change the world and transform our economy. With scientific research, nothing is guaranteed, and so we need to be willing to take risks. Scientific progress, after all, has never been a straight line. I come from the Bay Area, which includes Silicon Valley, where risk-taking is critical to the region's economy. Taking risks means sometimes you will not succeed, but scientific progress requires us to continue to take risks and invest in the future. Only by taking risks and charging forward, as our ranking member continues to emphasize, can we ever hope to reach goals which today may seem out of reach. The United States should be leading the world in the search for better, safer, more affordable energy. Instead, we have a bill before us that makes unacceptable, short-sighted cuts to EERE. While my amendment does not close the gap by any means, it is a signal to our scientists and engineers that we support renewable energy. An over-reliance on a limited range of fuel technologies and finite resources is short-sighted. Our strength lays in our ability to transition a new, cleaner, more sustainable, and more innovative source of energy. We must be competitive and not let ourselves get behind, and I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Madam Chair, I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise to oppose the gentleman's amendment. This amendment offers, as he said, a $1 million gesture of support for renewable energy reliability and efficiency activities of the Department of Energy. It would increase by funding $1 million using the departmental administration as its offset. While I support my colleague's good intention, what he calls his signal gesture of support, we simply cannot afford to increase energy efficiency and renewable energy by diverting funding from other essential activities. Therefore, I oppose the amendment, urge others to do as well. Yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Ohio seek recognition?
I move to strike the last word.
The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me say that the gentleman's amendment takes a step in the right direction. It's a modest step, but one that signals a view toward the horizon that is ahead of us, and I rise in support of his very responsible amendment that would make an investment in our future and move to a more diversified energy portfolio. It does nick an account, our administrative account, which is a bit troubling, but it is not at the level that some of the prior amendments today did. And so I support the gentleman's amendment. I thank him for all the time he spent on the floor today waiting his turn. Talk about a gentleman of the House, you surely are. And so I want to thank Congressman Swalwell for his leadership and for trying to take a step to the future in offering your amendment today. And I yield back. I urge my colleagues to vote for the Swalwell amendment and yield back my remaining time.
The gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from California. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair, I request a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from California will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Madam Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. McClintock of California. Page 22, line 5, after the dollar amount insert reduced by $731,600,000. Page 22, line 20, after the dollar amount insert reduced by...
Unanimous consent to suspend.
Is there objection? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I applaud the committee's decision to cut the failed energy efficiency and renewable energy program by half. My amendment simply completes the very good work of the committee and cuts it by the other half, along with similar subsidies that we provide the nuclear and fossil fuel industries, saving an additional $1.5 billion. If we're serious about an all-of-the-above energy policy, we have got to stop using taxpayer money to pick winners and losers based on their political connections, and instead require every energy company to compete on its own merits as decided by the customers it attracts by offering better products at lower costs and by the investors that it attracts as well. For too long we've suffered from the conceit that politicians can make better energy investments with taxpayer money than investors can make with their own money. It is this conceit that has produced the continuing spectacle of collapsing energy scandals epitomized by the Solyndra fiasco. At least Solyndra was funded from a loan program in which the public had a chance to get some of its money back when these dubious schemes go bankrupt. My amendment eliminates the direct spending that funds research and development and commercialization projects for politically favored firms, money that taxpayers have no chance of recovering after it's spent. And let me emphasize that any breakthroughs financed with the research and development money paid by the taxpayers under these programs does not go into the public domain where everyone can benefit. These innovations, if there are any, are financed by taxpayers and yet are owned lock, stock, and barrel by the private companies. This is a gift of public funds, pure and simple. My amendment protects taxpayers from being forced into paying the research and development budgets of these companies. It gets government out of the energy business and requires all energy companies and all energy technologies to compete equally on their own merits and with their own funds. This amendment cuts all such subsidies. About half go to fossil fuel and nuclear industries that are capable of doing very well on their own, and about half goes to the so-called alternative energy technologies. We've been told for years, of course, that that's necessary to nurture these new and promising programs, but they are not new and they are not promising. Photovoltaic cells, for example, were invented in 1839, and in nearly 175 years of technological research and innovation and billions of dollars of taxpayer subsidies, we have not yet invented a more expensive way to generate electricity. So we hide its true cost to consumers through subsidies taken from their taxes. and nor is there any earthly reason why taxpayers should be forced to serve as the R&D program for General Motors or for any other company or technology. The actual research and development should be paid for by the companies that will profit from these long-promised breakthroughs, and if they're not willing to finance them with their own money, we have no business forcing our constituents to finance them with theirs. All we've accomplished with these programs is to take dollars that would have naturally flowed into the most effective and promising technologies and diverted them into those that are politically favored. This misallocation of resources not only destroys jobs and productive ventures, it ends up minimizing our energy potential instead of maximizing it and destroying our wealth instead of creating it. Let every energy technology rise or fall on its own merits. If the technology is promising, it doesn't need our help, and if it isn't promising, it doesn't deserve our help. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Chair, I rise in opposition to the amendment. The amendment would eliminate all renewable energy and energy efficiency activities, fossil energy activities, and severely reduce funding for the nuclear energy in favor of deficit savings. And of course, the committee has done a lot. We've done a lot of cutting. We're down to, way below the 2008 levels. I think we've made a commitment in our committee to reduce spending and contribute to reducing the deficit. Nuclear energy research does keep American innovation at the forefront of the technology that we invented. I think we need to continue that leadership. Fossil energy, whether people like it or not, provides 82% of our nation's energy needs, and we need to find ways to refine and make it even more productive. And lastly, renewable energy addresses high gas prices. It helps Americans manufacture and compete in the global marketplace. So maybe not all of those activities are imperative, but renewable energy is part of that equation, and our bill supports diversity of energy supply, and therefore, Madam Chair, I oppose the amendment and urge members to do likewise. And yield back.
Yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from New Jersey for raising opposition to the amendment. I'm glad he gave me a few moments, Madam Chair, to slow down a bit before I would comment on the amendment. The author of the amendment would probably want to take a few steps more to carry out the full intent of what he's proposing, would be to eliminate all subsidies for everything. Then where would we be? I suppose if we're going to be consistent in this, if we were to adopt this amendment, we ought to go to the oil and gas industry and eliminate all of the subsidies that they have, which are tax breaks, direct subsidies by reducing their taxes to the tune of well over $10 billion a year. Probably not a bad idea. And then to go on, as the chairman of the committee has suggested, to take on all of the other subsidies. Where would we be? It's a long history of America, dating back really to the Founding Fathers, in which Alexander Hamilton presented to the Congress, at the request of George Washington, a plan on manufactures, in which was stated a policy then and carried forward ever since that time, some 230-plus years, in which the federal government has been directly involved in the development of the American industries. For example, at that time, Alexander Hamilton suggested that the federal government ought to support the development of roads, ports, and canals. And in fact, one not far from here received that assistance, the Potomac Canal. And ports were built. Eventually, lighthouses were put up, all of them to benefit commerce. Abraham Lincoln subsidized, with the consent of Congress and the Senate, subsidized the Transcontinental Railroad that has helped the gentleman's state of California and my state of California. There's a long, long history of America in which the federal government has directly, indirectly subsidized the creation of industry. We went to the moon, but we created enormous numbers of businesses as a direct result. And in the gentleman's pocket is an iPhone or some other device that was directly subsidized by the federal government. Now, if you want to go back and simply forget about progress, then carry out this amendment to its fullest extent. I don't think any of us want to go there. I'd ask for a no vote on the amendment.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Ohio seek recognition?
I move to strike the last word.
The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, I rise in opposition to this amendment, and I listened to the gentleman's arguments, and I just want to point something out. The gentleman is saying that private industry will do this in any case. I have been very engaged in our part of the country with local companies and inventors that are trying to lead America into the future. And what's interesting about the start of some of these new technologies is many of these inventors don't have the deep pockets of huge multinational corporations. And when smaller high-tech companies start out, maybe these inventors have 10, 20, 30 patents to their name. Sometimes they launch from a cooperative effort with a university base. They don't have the funds to do the kind of basic research that's necessary to move their technology forward. They need the help of entities like the Department of Energy. And so it just doesn't happen by magic that one moves the technology forward. Most businesses don't have the interest or the funding to put into this direct research, basic research. So, for example, with solar, which is something our region of the country knows quite a bit about because it's spun off of the glass industry, just getting 7 layers of material to adhere takes incredible effort. If you are a small inventor, if you are a smaller company, I defy you to roll steel so thin and then find adherents to go with it that will hold electrical charges, and then to invent the electrical materials that go through there. And by golly, over the last 30 years, they have done it. They have brought the cost of panels down to a competitive rate. Where we are now is storage capacity, moving the electricity from those plates to storage systems that will actually be more efficient, and then onto the grid. So please don't say that the work that they go through, the Americans who really do invent our future, who often are blocked by the people that sit in this chamber and can't even imagine what they are up against technologically, don't think that what they do doesn't matter. And while they're doing this, what do they face? Just in the solar industry, the Chinese dumping 2 million panels globally and pushing down the price. A country that's a communist country, whose economy is a Marxist market system, a Leninist market system. And we ask our individual inventors to compete with that, and we do nothing to help them out? By golly, I'd fight for these Americans any day of the year, because I know the next generation will be more independent than today's generation because of what they are doing, and I will do anything in my power to help them. That is the role of the government of the United States, to lift up those who are trying to make this country free again and separate us from those countries and those interests that don't share our political values. And so I want to be a champion for those who are out there fighting for the future. And they're not all big multinationals who have these deep pockets they can just reach into, but they're individual Americans who are taking what they've learned in their company and they can't finance it alone. Banks won't necessarily do it because the technology isn't fully developed. They need a partnership. And we're the one partnership at the federal level that can help lift their technology and bring it forward. I'm proud of them. And, sir, I oppose your amendment. I think it's a well-intentioned amendment, but you know what? It doesn't lead us forward. And it really doesn't help those inventors and those companies around this country who are leading us into the future. I ask the membership to oppose the gentleman's amendment, and I yield back my remaining time.
The gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. For what purpose does